Hi class, this is course 3, lesson 36. Today we are going to talk about multiplying and dividing integers and multiplying and dividing terms. Remember, integers are the counting numbers and their opposites and zero. So we're going to talk about multiplying signed numbers, so positives and negatives. Rules for multiplying and dividing integers, you're going to want to have this definitely in your notes and refer back to that often. We're going to multiply or divide as indicated. And if the two numbers have the same sign, the answer is positive, and if it's a different sign, the answer is negative. So plus times plus is going to equal plus, or minus times minus is going to equal plus. And if you have plus times negative, it's negative. And if you have negative times plus, it's negative. Here are some examples. Multiply negative 4 times negative 10. Well, 4 times 10 is 40, and I have the same sign, so my answer, my product is positive 40. Here I have positive 4 times negative 10. 4 times 10 is 40. I have opposite signs, so my product is negative. Division works the same way. 18 divided by 3 is 6. I have the same sign, so my answer is positive. 18 divided by negative 3 is 6, and the signs were different, so it's negative. Now, you do not need to write the plus sign when you're saying it's a positive 40. We generally don't. I did for illustration purposes. The only sign that you absolutely have to have is that negative sign. Okay, so here's some different applications. You're going to see problems like this. A number, a base to a power. This time it's negative 1. Now, you do not, one way you can do this is write it out, negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1. But you do not need to do that, because if you take these two together, you get positive 1. And then if you take those two together, a positive 1 times a negative 1, product is 1, and they differ in sign, giving you negative 1. The shortcut here is how many of those factors are going to be negative? All 3. 3 is an odd number, so odd number of negatives will always equal a negative. Even number negatives will always equal a positive. Okay, because you are making pairs. When back here when we said if they have the same sign, if two numbers have the same sign, then your answer is positive. So we're grouping these together in pairs, and then they become positive. So anytime you have an odd number of negatives, your answer will be negative when you multiply or divide. Okay, now this one is one that you will struggle with if you do not pay attention to detail. This says x squared equals y. Solve for y when x equals negative 2. Now, anytime you do substitution, you need to get in the habit of rewriting the problem using parentheses where the value, the variable is that you're going to replace or substitute the value for. Okay, so I put parentheses around the x, and then it's squared. So I'm going to fill this in, substituting x with negative 2. So now it tells me that I'm taking negative 2 times itself. Negative 2 times negative 2 equals 2 times 2 is 4, and negative times negative is positive, so your answer for y is 4. Okay, square roots versus the square root, the radical. When it actually, when you're doing square roots, there are two numbers that you can multiply times themselves to get the same answer. You could take, well, in this example up here, we could take negative 2 times negative 2 to get 4, or we could take 2 times 2 to get 4. So when they ask you for the square roots, they're asking you for both the positive and the negative value. Okay, but when they do this, when they show you the square root of 4, they only want the principal root. Principal root, you know, I think that's LE. Principal root. They only want the principal root, which is the positive root. If they said, if the problem looks like this, then they want the positive root, which is 2, but then they want the opposite of it. So your answer would be -2. And I hope that makes sense. And if it doesn't, please ask for clarification. So if the problem says the square roots of 49, that's where you need to put 7 and -7. You need both of them. I can multiply 7 times 7 and get 49, or I can multiply -7 times -7 to get 49. This problem over here says, what is the square root of 49? I want the principal root, the positive root, so this is just 7. Okay, so let's talk about multiplying and dividing terms. Okay, so we're going to have to use our laws of exponents. And we can use the commutative property to rewrite this so that the like items are together. So we can rewrite this as 12 times -4 times x squared times x times y times z. Okay, so I just used commutative property and rewrote everything so that the like items were together to make it easier for me. So now I can combine these. 12 times -4, 48, but only one was negative, so it's negative. My base here is x, and when I multiply, I add exponents, so 2 plus 1 is 3. Y times y would be y squared times z, and then I don't need those little dots in there, so I'm going to clean that up. It'd be -48 x cubed y squared z. Division is the same way. Using your laws of exponents, divide those items that are similar. So 12 divided by -4 is -3. X squared divided by x, when you divide like bases, you subtract the exponent, so you only have one x left. Y divided by y would be 1, and then we're going to have a z left in the denominator. Okay, last thing for you here today, we need to expand. And remember that this illustrates the distributive property, so you're going to multiply that factor on the outside to both terms on the inside. So this is really 4x times 2x, and then minus 3 times 4x. Okay, I just wrote that backwards so it's a little clear. This becomes 4 times 2, 8, x times x, laws of exponents, add those exponents, x squared. This 4 times -3 becomes -12 with an x. And now, I said -12, right? But you know that that's the same thing as adding. Subtraction is the same thing as adding. So this is really x squared plus a -12x. Okay? This is preferred. Okay? If you need to do this, that's fine. But just multiply and take the sign of whatever your product is. And here's another illustration that maybe will help you understand that a little better. So we're going to take -4x times 2x and -4x times -3. So we're going to get -4x times 2x and -4x times -3. This product here is -4 times 2, which is -8. X times x is x squared. -4 times -3 is a positive 12, but I need to write that positive because they're terms, and then x. Okay, this will be one of those topics where you'll probably want to have me double check your work as you go. So Please ask me if you have questions. Otherwise, I'll see you in class.